Many of my happiest and most vivid childhood family memories revolve around the Seder table, whether it was singing out of tune, the year we couldn't find the afikoman because my grandmother had already found it, thought it was a stray piece of matzah and eaten it, the time I opened the door for Elijah and there was actually somebody standing there, or now, just by looking at every stain of spilt wine in my Haggadah and wondering which of those family members no longer with us might have been responsible for it. And each wine stain or stray crumb of matzah that falls out connects me to them. Every family, I'm sure, develops its own particular Passover traditions, retaining the rituals but making them somehow relevant and contemporary for their own family and each new generation. In many senses, for me, this is as valuable as the actual religious instruction. As I get older, I feel an increasing sense of responsibility to do what I can do to ensure these traditions continue beyond my own lifetime. For this reason, Pesach has long been one of my favourite festivals, not least because it's the time when both community and family should be coming together over a meal to share in the story of the Exodus, to remember who we are and why we are. The late Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sacks wrote that sharing food is the first act through which slaves become free human beings. One who fears tomorrow does not offer his bread to others, but one who is willing to divide his food with a stranger has already shown himself capable of fellowship and faith, the two things from which hope is born. That is why we begin the Seder by inviting others to join us. That is how we turn affliction into freedom. This year, as with last year, of course, we can't come together in the physical way that he described and that we would all like. And after a year of living with restrictions and fears and anxieties, everyone I know is yearning for the return of the freedom to live their lives again as they would wish. But whereas a year ago perhaps we sat on Zoom Seders fearful of what we were going through and how this contemporary plague might touch each of us and our families, maybe this year we will be there with a little cautiously justified optimism and that freedom a little more within our reach. And when those freedoms do return and we can come together again for services, for seders, for a coffee or a meal or a hug with friends and family, it will be important for us to remember what this last 12 months has felt like, because we have had only the tiniest glimpse of what it is genuinely like to have our freedoms curtailed. It should focus our minds on those around us, far away or closer to home, who are genuinely without their liberty, whether through circumstance, disadvantage, or even the wickedness of others. And with that in mind, I want to close with a quote from Rabbi Morris Joseph, who served as both a rabbi of the Orthodox communities here, as well as in the Reform movement at the West London Synagogue in the early part of the 20th century. He wrote that Passover affirms the great truth that liberty is the inalienable right of every human being. That really is something to be remembered, and something we have an obligation to shout from the rooftops when our own individual freedoms have been restored. Chag Sameach.